Hi, welcome to my Paris vlog. Basically, me living la vie en rose. When in Paris, the first thing you have to see is none other than La Tour Eiffel.
Oh my God!
The Eiffel Tower was built in 1889 and was a commemoration of the centennial of the French Revolution. It soon after became a symbol of Paris and the entire country. Next, I hopped onto the metro to get to Musée Monet. I chose this museum first because I was so excited to see the exhibition on Piet Mondrian. This museum, which is famous for its impressionist and post-impressionist artworks, was actually at one point a house. In the 1800s, this house was purchased by the Marmottan family, a family well known for being appreciators and collectors of the fine arts. In the 1930s, a son in the Marmottan family had handed over the home and its assets to the French Academy of Fine Arts. Thus it became a museum. The museum really gained popularity after the donation of all of these Monet paintings from Monet's second son. The most famous painting in the gallery is Impression Sunrise, which gave the movement its name. This was among the paintings stolen during the 1985 Yakuza theft of $12 million worth of artwork. The museum also has a beautiful and sometimes overlooked collection of Berthe Morisot paintings. I spent a few hours in the museum and then got back on the metro to get to the hotel and get some rest for day 2. If you didn't already know, after sunset, every hour on the hour, the Tour Eiffel lights up for 10 minutes. To start day 2, I walked across the Seine towards Champs-Élysées. I had a short brunch at La Durée. What many people don't know is that although La Durée macaroons are sold worldwide, they're only made, hibernated, and shipped out of Europe. The place was founded as a space for snacks and socialization, and I think it remains that today. Favorite flavors are rose and coffee. Shortly after, I took a walk through the 8th arrondissement to the Musee dOrsay. This construction, built in the 1900s, was originally a train station. In the 1970s, it was transformed into a museum, and that's what we see today. The museum had an incredible exhibition on Degas' escapades at l'Opéra. Edgar Degas is a French impressionist most well known for the paintings and drawings that he did of ballerinas. He also created a single strange, lifelike sculpture shown here. His work depicting ballet dancers really encapsulate the movement and power they show on stage. The Musee also has a great collection of art that embodies l'orientalisme, an appreciation and almost obsession with Eastern culture. The painting behind me is Manet's Le Balcon. The woman in the foreground is Berthe Morisot, who Manet later made his wife. The central nave of the ground floor is where most of the sculptures are located in this museum. At the end of the nave is where you see the clock that's iconic to the Musée d'Orsay. The upper level houses some of my favorite paintings. Over here is the scandalous yet well-loved Déjeuner sur l'herbe by Edouard Manet. Although rejected by the Salon sanctioned by the Royal Academy of Fine Arts, this painting was displayed in Napoleon's Salon des Refusés. Renoir's Bal du Moulin de la Galette. Pierre-Auguste Renoir was actually a self-taught artist. Here are his paintings Danse à la Ville and À la Campagne. Van Gogh. Need I say more? Museums like this are filled with incredible works of art that you wouldn't see anywhere else in the world. Alas, it's time to bid Musée d'Orsay adieu and continue on our adventure. Next, I headed to Musée Delacroix in the 6th arrondissement. This quaint and quiet museum is well hidden away in Paris. Eugène Delacroix was a painter during the Romanticism movement in France. His work mainly challenged the preceding neoclassical perfection that artists like his nemesis Ingres produced. His looser and more expressive brushstroke style is reminiscent of Italian Renaissance painter Rubens. Clarity and definition were not really a priority here, and Baudelaire himself said, Delacroix is passionately in love with passion, but coldly determined to express passion as clearly as possible. The environment inside was so serene and quiet that I didn't want to disturb the people around me in film. I did record this outside in the garden of the Musée Delacroix before I headed off to my next place. I visited the oldest church in Paris, Saint-Germain-des-Prés. The neighborhood that this church is in is famous for being the meeting place in which writers F. Scott Fitzgerald, Hemingway, and Pound formed a group called the Lost Generation. They used to hang out and work on their craft in this area. The Romanesque architectural style in the nave, juxtaposed with the Gothic style of the choir, is pretty cool, and the restoration of the paint has made the interior look really beautiful. The burial of the philosopher Descartes is in this church, so pay your respects to the father of geometry and algebra. From here I took a short walk to Ile de la Cité on Pont Neuf. Right behind me here is the Gothic Sainte-Chapelle. My main reason for going to the Ile was to see what remains of Notre Dame. I had been to the Notre Dame when I was much younger, and I climbed its cathedral stairs all the way to the top. After hearing about the fire that burned its backside, I was really determined to come back and see it once again, the beautiful Gothic architecture. The symbol of Paris, the Virgin Mary, and Christianity in Europe still stands strong. I had one more museum on my schedule for the day, but I decided to take the more scenic walking route. I walked along the Pont d'Arcole in order to pass by the Hôtel de Ville. In 1535, François I actually commissioned to have the Hôtel de Ville built in order to make Paris look more beautiful. In fact, it wasn't a real hotel. It was actually meant to be a city hall. So my last museum for the day is the Picasso National Museum. Pablo Picasso was one of the most renowned and influential artists during the 20th century. He was a large proponent in some of the movements that shaped what modern art is today. He was born in Spain and eventually moved to Paris to be inspired and live the life of a starving artist. What's unique about Picasso is that he never stuck to one style. Over the course of his career, there's a very obvious shift away from the realism that his father and his early education had ingrained in. Although this museum is a little bit out of the way and a bit small, it's definitely worth the visit to learn more about this incredible man. And fast forward to day 3. Although the city metros are super convenient and fast, sometimes you just need to be outside to take the city in. I definitely recommend paying to ride the electric public scooters. I was craving something sweet, so I decided to stop by Paris's famous Jelena. Jelena, designed in the Belle Époque style, was opened in Paris in the 1900s. This cafe was born as a meeting place for artists, intellectuals, writers, and poets alike. The interior architecture is nothing short of romantic. The experience here was almost poetic. This was basically the best hot chocolate, chocolat africain, I've had in my whole life. So my next destination is none other than the Musée du Louvre. This museum, home of the eminent Mona Lisa, is less than a 5-minute walk away. The Louvre is the world's largest art museum. When you enter the courtyard, you can see just how massive it really is. It covers more than 70,000 square meters, and it houses somewhere close to 40,000 works of art. The building was originally constructed as a castle by the King of France, Philip II, in the 12th century. As successive kings took charge of the land, they continued to expand it larger and larger. In 1682, King Louis XIV moved his residence to the Palace of Versailles, and the Louvre became the house for his collection of art. They began holding salons at this Louvre, and it was after the French Revolution that the National Assembly decided this massive building should house all of France's masterpieces. There is definitely something for everyone to love here. At the top of the first flight of stairs is the Winged Victory of Samothrace. This Hellenistic sculpture has Aegean origins and represents the goddess Nike at the prow of a ship. Its creation in the 2nd century was somewhat of a religious act as a commemoration to the Cabiri gods of fertility to protect those who wage the seas and to ensure victory in war. Each room of the Apollon Gallery is not only decorated wall to wall, but to the ceilings as well. There are windows situated throughout the Musee for you to look onto the hubbub of the courtyard. It's pretty incredible how ornately decorated and distinct each room is. The trompe-l'oeil ceilings like this one really trick your eye into envisioning further extended vertical space through just paint. In this ceiling here, Calais brings the appearance of a dome by painting the fake skylight above. There's so much going on with the figures up in this fake balcony. I love how each character encroaches into our space out of the painting. Walking through the Sully wing of the 2nd floor of the museum, there are a lot of really admirable paintings to see, like this Philippe de Champagne. The small collection of impressionist paintings ranges from Monet to Renoir. I think that they're beautifully curated, and the backdrop of this selection really evokes a lot of emotion during the viewing experience. It's so romantic and warm. The curators of the Louvre's rooms and exhibitions deserve a lot of credit, not only for bringing these pieces together in each room, but for coordinating them in a way that really tells a story beyond the beauty of art. François Gérard, whose works you can see in this room, is best known for his touching painting of Cupid and Psyche. Formerly trained by Jacques-Louis David, Gérard created incredible work from the ripe age of 17. His work is praised by a select few, including Ingres, until he was appointed as portraitist for the imperial court. Then came his real fame. This is my favorite section of the Louvre. The collection of Rococo paintings here brings me some unparalleled levels of joy. Being able to stand in front of and admire Fragonard, Watteau, and Boucher is like a dream. A soft, playful, and romantic dream that you never want to wake up from. It's no surprise that I'm in love with this art movement. The courtyard of the museum is so lively and bustling. Across from the pyramid is the Arc de Triomphe du Carrousel. It's the smallest of the 3 arches on the axis in the city between the Louvre and La Défense. The famous one in Paris you're thinking of is one of the 3 as well. Although I would have more than loved to spend the rest of my days in the Louvre, I had a special date with Monet awaiting for me at Musée de l'Orangerie. This is an impressionist and post-impressionist gallery west of the Tuileries Garden. It's called l'Orangerie because in 1852, Napoleon III had this building built to house the citrus trees of the Tuileries Gardens during the harsh winters. The home of the trees was actually the Louvre before this building was built. After Napoleon's empire fell in 1870, the building went to the state, and it was after World War I that the state gave Monet the space to display his work. Monet painted 8 curved panels for this museum to fit in the oval rooms which together form an infinity symbol that he helped design. His water lilies, nymphaea, found their home here in 1922. This series of paintings depicts the pond of Monet's Giverny garden. The loose brushstrokes and free-flowing colors here are true to the characteristics of the Impressionist movement that he started. The reflections of light that he creates in these paintings are pretty stunning. The variation in texture he introduces is so iconic to his work. It's so easy to spot a Monet painting because of his unique style. By the time he painted these, he was around 70 years old. His fading eyesight may have even contributed to the vague and blurriness of some of his work. You can admire Monet from afar, but in order to truly appreciate his prowess, you have to stand within the 2 main rooms of this museum. The ambiance is so serene here. It's almost weird leaving the peace of the Musée de l'Orangerie and stepping out into the traffic of the Paris streets. It was such a beautiful day out, so I decided to walk a bit. I crossed the Pont de la Concorde over the Seine. I love how La Tour Eiffel is such a beacon in this city. You just feel at home every time you see it. You feel at ease. While walking along the Quai d'Orsay, I found the Pont d'Alexandre and I couldn't help but stop and take in the scenery for a bit. The BeauxArts style of the British decoration is pretty extravagant. Many iconic films have featured this location, like Bond's A View to Kill, A Very Long Engagement, Midnight in Paris, and Me Before You. So after my sad boy hours on the bridge, I grabbed a lime scooter and headed over to Musée National des Arts Asiatiques, Guillemets, in the Place d'Iéna of the 16th arrondissement. PSA, riding the scooter and filming yourself at the same time is much harder than it actually looks. Pro tip, you probably shouldn't try the same. If only the scooter could go up the stairs as well. This musée houses one of the largest collections of Asian art abroad. The founder, Émile Etienne Guimet, was commissioned by the Minister of Public Instruction in 1879 to travel and study the art of the Far East. Many of his findings from that voyage are housed here. The collection contains a range of Greco-Buddhist, Serindian, Chinese, Indian, and Southeast Asian art. I have a really personal connection to the field of Buddhist art in general. My concentration in my university art history degree was on 14th century Buddhist painting and sculpture from the region of Tibet. I find the iconography and development of style in Asia so interesting. The museum is organized by region, so as you progress through the sections, you'll see distinct changes in the portrayal of figures. Each region has its own conceptions as to how the same subject was to be represented. Though I don't like to use the word secular in the context of this art, there are plenty of works in the Guimet collection that depart from the focus on religious iconography. These woodblock prints are an excellent example. I'm a big Hokusai fan, so seeing any kind of colored print gets me excited. To end off my day, I decided to just walk through Trocadero. This place in front of La Tour Eiffel was named after the 1823 Battle of Trocadero. The garden is really beautiful when it's illuminated at dusk. Anyway, on to day 4. My first goal for the day was to immerse myself in the home of Amélie, Montmartre. I took the metro to Anvers. If you didn't already know, Montmartre is basically a big hill in the 18th arrondissement, best known for 3 things: the art scene, the Sacré-Cœur, and the cabaret night culture. During the Belle Époque of the 19th century, many artists lived and had their studios here. The history of this area runs pretty deep. There are records from the 8th and 9th century of this area being referred to as Mount Mercury and Mount Mars. In the 12th century, Saint-Pierre was rebuilt near the Royal Abbey. The area was a popular pilgrimage site for those who followed the martyrs Saint-Denis and members of the Benedictine order. During the French Revolution, the main abbey of Montmartre was destroyed. After military conflict related to the Franco-Prussian War, the uprising Paris Commune, and the National Guard, the Grand Basilica of Sacré-Cœur was built as an expiation for the troubles endured. It wasn't until the tail end of the 19th century that artists began to gather here in order to pursue their craft. The cheap cost of living and tax-free wine were a bonus to living in this beautiful area back then. And there she is, the Sacré-Cœur. The name Sacré-Cœur means Sacred Heart. The limestone basilica is dedicated to the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Holy Eucharist, but it's also a commemoration to the 58,000 lives lost during the strife of war. It stands as the highest point in the city of Paris. The basilica is architected in a Romano-Byzantine style, which contrasts heavily with the Baroque constructions around the rest of the city, like Palais Garnier. The arched portico is topped with 2 bronze equestrian sculptures of Joan of Arc and King St. Louis IX. For those who don't know, many historical bronze sculptures are not actually the color bronze, anymore that is. That's because over time, bronze undergoes a natural corrosion process when it's exposed to air and the elements. The patina that forms over bronze is often green, like what you see here. There are usually a lot of performers outside the basilica. When I was there, a really talented guy was singing La Bohème. La Bohème by Charles Aznavour is a song very dear to my heart. The song's actually about a painter bidding adieu to the old Bohemian Montmartre. Okay, so this is the Place du Théâtre. Originally, it was a town hall. The square is now transformed into an area for artists selling their work and taking live portrait commissions. It's a magical experience to see some of these artists working. Interestingly enough, there's a pretty intense competition for artists to get a space here at the Place. Artists are allotted 3 square feet of space, and the waiting list to get a space is almost 10 years long. From 1872 to 1914, Montmartre was really the place to be if you were an artist. Renoir's Bal de Moulin de la Galette was brought to life here. Some artist associations like Les Nabis and the Incohérents were formed, and many artists, including Modigliani, Van Gogh, Brissot, Matisse, Degas, and Toulouse-Lautrec, worked and found some true inspiration here. Believe it or not, in Picasso's time spent in Montmartre, his most famous painting, Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, also took form here. So the next museum on my hit list is Musée Cognac J. It's a bit out of the way, but oh, the lengths I go for some good Rococo paintings. I grabbed an espresso and walked over after getting off the metro. This museum houses a quaint collection of the 18th century art of Ernest Cognac and his wife, Marie-Louise J. On his passing, Ernest bequeathed the entire collection to the city of Paris, and it became a museum in 1929. 18th century French art was dominated by Baroque, Rocaille, and neoclassical influences. The art created during the reigns of Louis XV and XVI were really great examples of the lives of splendor that the bourgeoisie lived. The art resonated with feelings of fête galante. This can really be seen in the decoration of Versailles' shift to lighter colors, gilding, and chinoiserie once Louis XV came of age to take the throne. The art of this age is light, playful, and full of emotion. The cheeky stories that each painting, sculpture, and trinket holds are delightful. Nudity isn't really shied from, and romance, drama, and extravagance are central themes. Being that this is the predecessor to the Baroque art that later takes form in France, there's a lot of dynamism in the work here. Many popular Rocaille painters did not shy away from mythological subjects either. The very last place I visited was kind of on a whim. I didn't plan on coming here, but I just followed an instinct and went in. This museum is the Petit Palais, designed for the 1900 Exhibition Universelle in the BeauxArts style. The exterior of this building is really grand in its decoration, and the 2 floors of the museum exhibit plenty of space for the collection. I actually love the decoration of this museum's interior. Despite having a nice collection of medieval, Renaissance, drawings, objets d'art, furniture, and paintings, the Petit Palais is often overlooked. Unfortunately so. It was quiet when I went in, and not too many people were there. Quite possibly, the Grand Palais across the street would be more crowded. After wandering around here for a bit, I headed to the Champs-Élysées, and I caught a glimpse of the old Arc de Triomphe. Paris, tout me manque tellement, je reviendrai. Thank you all for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.